I am Emelina. There is a hierarchy of sorrows in a blended family. The loss of a father is a profound and shattering grief. But the loss of a spouse, it is the loss of a world. It is the silence in the room that was once filled with a particular laugh, the empty side of a bed that still holds his shape. It is a lonely, all-consuming sorrow. My stepson, David, grieved for his father. I do not doubt that. But his grief was quickly joined by another, uglier companion, a sense of entitlement, an assumption that with his father gone, the natural order would reassert itself. That I, the second wife, the stepmother, was merely a temporary caretaker for a life that rightfully belonged to him. The blood heir. He gave me 1 week. 1 week after we buried the love of my life, my husband of 22 years, before he arrived at my door, not to comfort, but to claim. He came to discuss the transition, to take charge of the house, the finances, the decisions. He spoke to me as if I were a tenant whose lease had expired, as if the last 2 decades of my life had been a pleasant, but ultimately inconsequential guest stay. He assumed everything was his. He assumed I was powerless. He assumed the love and partnership his father and I shared was a legal fiction, easily dissolved by death. He assumed wrong. And the day I invited him back to this house, sat him in his father's favorite chair, and placed a simple, legally binding document in his hands, was not a day of vengeance. It was a day of quiet, profound justice. It was the day he learned that respect is not inherited through blood, but earned through loyalty, and that his father's final wish was to protect the woman he loved from exactly this. I met Robert when I was 47, a widow myself, running a small but successful bookstore. He was 55, a retired engineer, and the kindest, most deliberate man I had ever known. He had 1 son, David, from his first marriage. David was 24 at the time, already a man living across the country. Robert was up front. My son and I, we have a complicated relationship. He is very much his mother's son. She passed when he was a teenager, and I think he has spent his life seeing anyone else in my life as a betrayal of her memory. He warned me David might be cold. He asked if I was sure. I told him love was worth a little chill. David's chill was more of a permafrost. He was polite, in a distant, formal way. He called me Eleanor, never stepmom. He visited twice a year, and our interactions were like a carefully rehearsed diplomatic visit. He'd ask about the bookstore, I'd ask about his finance job, and we'd both retreat to neutral corners. Robert would sigh afterwards, holding me close. He just doesn't know how to let anyone else in. I'm so sorry, my love. We built a beautiful life, Robert and I. We traveled. We merged our lives fully. He moved into my smaller, cozier home, and we sold his larger, colder one, putting the proceeds into joint investments. I sold my bookstore when I retired, and we used that along with his savings to buy this house, a mutual dream home. Every brick, every bookshelf, every rose bush in the garden was chosen together. It was ours in the truest sense. Robert, pragmatic and loving, was keenly aware of the dynamics. About 5 years into our marriage, he brought up estate planning over a bottle of wine. I need to know you're protected, Ellie. No matter what. David is financially secure. He has his mother's trust, his own career. You are my wife. This life we've built is ours. We saw a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia. We drew up wills, powers of attorney, a living trust. The trust, in dry legal language, spelled out our shared dream. The house, the investments, the proceeds from everything, would go to the surviving spouse in full, irrevocable control. Upon the second spouse's passing, the remainder would go to David. It was clear, ironclad, and a reflection of Robert's deepest value. That marriage is a partnership that does not end at the grave. We told David about the arrangements during one of his stilted visits. We presented it as a matter of fact. This ensures Eleanor is cared for, and ultimately, you will inherit what's left. David had nodded, sipped his scotch and said, "Of course. Whatever you think is best, Dad." His eyes, however, had flickered to me with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Not anger. Not even resentment. Just a cold assessment, as if I were a clause in a contract he would later contest. Robert's illness was a thief that came in slowly, then ransacked everything. A 2-year decline from a vibrant man to a frail shadow. I was his primary caregiver. David flew in for a weekend at the beginning, and for the final week at the end. His visits were functional. He'd sit with his father, talk about markets, then retreat to a hotel. The hard, unglamorous work of care. The sleepless nights, the difficult conversations, the sheer physical and emotional labor, was mine. David called it devotion. I called it love. When Robert passed, peacefully in his sleep at home, the world went gray. The grief was a physical weight. David handled the arrangements with efficient detachment. He chose the funeral home, the casket, the newspaper notice. I was too numb to fight. I just wanted to hold on to the last shreds of my husband. At the funeral, David gave a beautiful eulogy about his father's legacy, his strength, his love for David's mother. He mentioned me once, as my father's wife, Eleanor. It was a dismissal in formal attire. The family friends, our friends, looked at me with pity. The hierarchy was being established in real time. The blood son was the chief mourner. I was the supporting character whose part was now over. The day after the funeral, the calls started. "We need to discuss the estate. I'll be over tomorrow to start going through Dad's papers." His tone had shifted from distant to directive. He arrived exactly 1 week after we laid Robert to rest. He was in a suit, carrying a leather portfolio, as if for a business meeting. I offered tea. He declined. "Let's get to it, Eleanor. This is difficult for everyone, but we need to be practical." He sat in Robert's armchair, a move that felt intentionally symbolic. He laid out his plan. 1. The house. He'd have a realtor friend value it. "The market is hot. We should sell quickly. You'll need to start packing. I can recommend some senior living communities that are quite nice." 2. The finances. He needed access to all bank and investment accounts to assess the liquidity and start the probate process. He assumed, of course, that everything was in his father's name alone. 3. The possessions. He wanted to go through Dad's things to select heirlooms. He mentioned his grandfather's watch, his father's engineering textbooks. Not a word about what I might want to keep. I listened, my hands folded in my lap, the cool numbness of grief beginning to be replaced by a hotter, steadier flame. He spoke of we and us, but he meant him. He was erasing me from the narrative of my own life. When he finished, he leaned forward. "I know this is hard, but you have to be realistic. This was Dad's life. I'm his son. It's my responsibility to manage its conclusion." I looked at him. This man who had shared DNA with the love of my life, but seemed to share none of his heart. "David," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "You are grieving. I am grieving. This is not the time for these discussions." "There's no better time," he said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "Procrastination only complicates matters. I'm trying to help you. You are trying to help yourself," I said softly. "And you are operating under a significant misapprehension." I stood up. "I need you to leave now. But I would like you to come back tomorrow afternoon. There's something you need to see." He looked baffled, then irritated. "Elena, there's no need for games." "It's not a game," I said, walking to the front door and opening it. The message was clear. "It's a matter of law. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. He left, frustrated and suspicious. I closed the door and leaned against it, not in weakness but in preparation. The time for passive endurance was over. That night I didn't weep. I planned. I went to Robert's desk, our desk, and took out the fireproof box. Inside were the documents. The will, the trust, the deed to the house, the financial statements for our joint accounts and the trust accounts. I called Patricia, our lawyer. He's made his move. I said. Her response was crisp. Do you want me there tomorrow? No, I said. This is between family. But I may need you on speed dial. The documents speak for themselves, Elena. You are the trustee and the sole life beneficiary. You hold all the cards. Just remember, you don't have to play them all at once. I rehearsed nothing. I didn't need a script. The truth in black and white was my script. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next day, at 2:55 p.m., I set the stage. I placed 2 copies of the key documents on the oak desk in the study. I put on the teapot, a gesture of civility, not warmth. I sat in my usual chair, leaving Robert's armchair empty. A silent reminder. He arrived at 3:05, trying to reassert control by being late. He entered, his posture already combative. Sit please, David, I said, gesturing to the sofa, not the armchair. He sat annoyed. I hope this won't take long. I have a flight to catch. This will take exactly as long as it needs to, I said. I picked up the first document, the Revocable Living Trust. I slid it across the coffee table to him. This is the trust your father and I created 15 years ago. I suggest you read Article 4. Distribution upon death of first spouse. He picked it up, his eyes scanning the legalese. I watched his face. I saw the moment his understanding dawned. The color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back in a flush of anger and disbelief. His eyes widened, then narrowed. He read it again, as if the words might rearrange themselves. The entire corpus of the trust shall remain for the benefit of the surviving spouse. The surviving spouse shall serve as sole trustee with full, unrestricted powers of management, control and distribution. His head snapped up. This can't be right. He wouldn't. I slid the next document forward. The deed. The house is titled in the name of the trust. I am the trustee. Then the financial statements. Our investment accounts are trust assets. I am the trustee. Finally, the will. A simple pour-over. Will that directed any stray assets into the trust. I am the executor. I let the silence hang. Let the sheer, immovable weight of it all press down on him. You control everything, he finally stammered. The arrogance completely evaporated, replaced by a kind of terrified awe. Yes, I said simply. Your father and I built this life together. He ensured I would be able to continue living it. He wanted me to have security, dignity, and the home we shared for as long as I live. After that, you are the remainder beneficiary. But after that is not today. He was sputtering now, a broken machine. But the heirlooms. My grandfather's watch. Dad's things. Your father's personal effects, I said calmly, are just that, personal. I have set aside a box for you. It contains his father's watch, his college ring, his photo albums from before our marriage, and the engineering books you mentioned. You may take it when you leave. The rest are my memories. They stay. You can't cut me out, he said, a last desperate lunge. I am not cutting you out, David, I said, and here, I allowed a sliver of genuine sorrow into my voice. Your father did not cut you out. He provided for you, through your mother's trust and as the eventual heir to this one. What he did do was prioritize the well-being of his spouse. That is what a good man does. That is what a husband does. You tried to push me out of my own home a week after his funeral. You saw me as an obstacle to what you felt was yours. Your father saw me as his partner. That is the difference. He had no answer. The legal truth had stripped him of his arguments. The moral truth had stripped him of his righteousness. He just sat there, defeated. I poured a cup of tea for myself. I did not offer him one. This is my home, David. You are welcome here as a guest, as my stepson. if you can treat me with the respect that position deserves. But you are not the master of this house. You do not manage my affairs. That chapter is closed. He stood up, unsteady. He took the box of heirlooms I had prepared, sitting by the door. He didn't look at me. "Oh, I'll be in touch," he muttered, a hollow formality. "I'm sure you will," I said. "Through my lawyer, Patricia. Her card is on top of the documents. Any further communications regarding the estate should go through her." He left. I did not watch him go. I looked out the window at the garden Robert and I planted. I felt no triumph, only a deep, weary vindication. The house was quiet, but it was no longer empty. It was full of Robert's love, which had just from beyond the grave, fiercely protected me. In the months that followed, David's lawyers contacted Patricia. They poked and prodded at the trust, looking for any flaw. They found none. Robert had been meticulous. After incurring significant legal fees for himself, David finally ceased. Our relationship is now a distant, legal formality. We exchange obligatory cards at Christmas. That is all. The love Robert hoped might one day grow never had the chance. Some soil is too barren. But my life is rich. I live in my home. I tend my garden. I travel with friends. I volunteer at the local library. I am surrounded by a community that values me for myself, not for my relation to anyone. The will, the trust, they weren't just documents. They were Robert's final, most eloquent love letter. A letter that said, "I see you. I respect you. Our life together was real, and I will protect it, even when I am gone." David learned that day that grief does not confer ownership. That blood is not the only bond that matters in law or in life. He tried to push me out. Instead, he pushed himself into a permanent exile from any chance of a true family with me. I showed him the will. And in doing so, I didn't just show him a piece of paper. I showed him the unbreakable bond between his father and me. A bond he never understood, and now never will. If you are listening, and you are in a second marriage, a blended family, or any situation where others may see you as temporary or less than, hear this. Protect your partnership. Have the difficult conversations. See the lawyer. Sign the documents. Do it while love is alive and well, as an act of mutual care, not suspicion. Make your wishes ironclad. Because when grief strikes, it often brings out the worst in people, and the law is the only language some people understand. Do not assume good intentions will prevail. Arm your love with the protection it deserved. And if you are the one being pushed, being made to feel like a guest in your own life after a loss, be still. Know your rights. Gather your documents. Seek counsel. Then, stand your ground with the calm certainty of truth. You do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be vengeful. You simply have to be clear, and you have to be strong. The greatest rebuke to those who underestimate you is a quiet, unimpeachable competence. It is living a full, joyful life in the home they tried to take from you. It is showing them, without a word of gloating, that the love you shared was real, it was legal, and it is your enduring fortress. My stepson tried to push me out. He only succeeded in pushing himself out of my world. And I am at peace, in the home that love built, surrounded by the silence that is no longer lonely, but sovereignty. Love plans for tomorrow. Grief lives in yesterday. The law protects what remains. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.